Hello all and welcome back to another wonderful video. It has finally happened. The My Little Pony A New Generation movie has finally come out. It's been out for about 3 to 4 days now, depending on how you want to count it. So in today's video, I'm going to give a full spoil-filled review of that movie, and how I feel about it, of course. But right away, if you want a spoiler-free review, here that is now. The movie was amazing. It did a lot of things well, but of course stubbed its toe in a few places. No movie is ever perfect, of course, and that's really what I mean by that. But this movie was pretty good. It was exceptional. It was excellent, and it was well paced. The characters were well written, and I cared about all of them very quickly. Like, they introduced a character, and very shortly after, I cared about that character. They did it really well. They wrote all their characters really well. I even felt really bad for Sprout, and you'll understand more of that when I get into the spoiler section of the review, but I felt really bad for Sprout. So some of you are probably confused if you've actually seen the movie, but moving on, the movie kept me interested. It made me interested and invested, and it just kept me that way the entire time. I was smiling a lot throughout the entire movie, even through the second viewing. Even when I watched it the second time, I was still smiling and invested and all this other stuff. It was excellent. It did a really good job at that. And yeah, it does a really good job of making me feel good too when I watch it. The CGI as well was pretty good, so anyone worried about the CGI, I'm sure you won't be disappointed about that unless you are so against CGI that there is never good CGI in your opinion or something. So if you're super against CGI, you're probably not going to like this because it's a CGI film, but you should enjoy it regardless. It's pretty good. There's some interesting foreshadowing and symbolism used in the movie as well, which is pretty great to see. And lastly, the ending happened differently than I expected. So it has some pretty predictable stuff there, but it also kind of does things in a way that is a little bit unpredictable, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you're looking for the perfect way to set up the Gen 5 series coming next year, this movie sets that up perfectly, and I think we can expect a bright future for Gen 5. For those of you that are curious, this movie, of course, is setting up the Generation 5 series that is supposed to air next year on Netflix as well. It's going to air on Netflix. It's going to be CGI as well, so if you're against CGI, or if you didn't like the CGI in the film, you're probably not going to like the series either. Moving on, we're going to go a little bit more in depth on certain points. This essentially is where spoilers are going to start to come in. This is where I'm going to start saying things that are spoilery and things like that. So first things first, I want to mention that the opening of the movie, I think it was a very smart choice to start with the main six going on some quote-unquote adventure, only for us to immediately learn that this is just Sunny, Sprout, and Hitch playing with toys as a kid, or as kids, I guess. It's the perfect amount of Gen 4 to give longtime fans of MLP a sense of satisfaction, and is done perfectly. It does also bring up the cutie mark question again. There's also a couple of other things throughout the movie, like posters and other tiny little references and stuff like that. You actually literally hear the MLP theme song at a certain point, which is really awesome. But this does bring up the cutie mark question again, because if the scenes of the MLP Gen 4 characters, the main six, going on this adventure or whatever like that, is to be believed is the kids' imagination, then that means even the kids in this time period know that cutie marks are supposed to be on both sides of the flanks, or that it was supposedly on both sides of the flanks at some point. But it's not addressed or mentioned. It's really weird, and it's honestly a little bit unfortunate, but at the same time, I think that's okay. I think it's okay that we don't know, because if you really go through the movie and watch it and just look for a point where they could mention how cutie marks work, you're not going to really find a point, because maybe they don't even know how it works. And even if they did know how it works, where would they possibly bring up, hey, this is how cutie marks work, in a natural way that makes it flow good? There's just not a place for that. So I think that's also why I'm not super upset about us not really getting answers to what happened to Magic, because even the characters in this universe have no idea. So if they did, they would have said it. They would have given us exposition on, oh, this is what happened to Magic. But technically, no one knows what happened to Magic, so of course, the audience doesn't get to know that. So we do get this one scene, this one little scene where Zip says it's like everyone just forgot, which could imply a magical artifact was used on the world by someone who hated friendship a long time ago. Maybe Twilight and her friends couldn't stop them, because of course they could just erase all memory, so of course that would stop them. So it makes sense that that could be the case. We actually saw an artifact like this before in Equestria Girls, so it's possible that that's connected. Honestly, part of me doesn't want that to be connected because I want it to be something new, but at the same time, that'd be really cool because who knows what that would mean. Does that mean there was some kind of weird crossover with the Equestria Girls at some point where they went into the Pony universe or something like that and did something and left this artifact behind or something? Who knows? But it's really interesting, and it could potentially be how it happened. The whole world in this universe is completely clueless as to what happened, so like I said, we should be clueless too. The audience should be clueless because how could we know the answer if the entire world doesn't know the answer? So these kinds of questions can be explored and answered in the upcoming series. That's, well, not really upcoming, but it's supposed to happen next year. So these kinds of questions can be explored and answered in that series. I still think that they have to be answered because it's not going to be very interesting to just never have them answered. Ideally, we could even see small clues throughout the first season of the series or something like that, leading up to some kind of big epic finale where we learn what's going on and we figure out who it is that was responsible for it. Maybe they're even still around somehow and he's about to do it again. Like whoever this big bad villain is that's erasing memory or something like that is out there doing it again, and they find him and they stop him or something. That could be really cool. That could be an interesting thing to explore. I said earlier that I felt really bad for Sprout, and that's because of his mom, Phyllis. At the beginning of the movie, he's picked up by her from Sunny's house. He's obviously at Sunny's house because they were playing or whatever. And he gets picked up by his mother, and we clearly right away see how this character is. We see right away how Phyllis is. We get a feeling of that. And she's clearly the one that's been spreading the most amount of propaganda to Maritime Bay that unicorns and Pegasi are evil. Sunny's father actually straight up tells her that you're just brainwashing the town. So we essentially get direct confirmation that, yeah, she's kind of been manipulating the whole town this entire time and things like that. So she's clearly the one that's been doing this. Fast forward to the main characters being adults now, and we see that Phyllis has a whole factory that creates defense systems for unicorns and Pegasus attacks. If they attack, they use her systems and stuff to protect them. And it's all made at this factory, and she's responsible for all of that. So she's clearly spreading mistrust to profit off of it. She's clearly telling everyone that these unicorns and Pegasi are bad and things like that because she's profiting off of it. Whether or not she knows it's true or not doesn't necessarily matter here. She's clearly doing it just for profit. So you can only imagine what living with her your whole life would do to you. It would make you cowardice. It would make you scared of everything, and it might even hold you back from your full potential while also trying to make you want to push yourself to be even better so that they would like you more or something. It's honestly just overall a toxic situation for Sprout to live with her like that for as long as he has, and most likely it messed him up a lot. I might actually make a full, more super in-depth video about this in the future, but for now, that's all I really feel about with this character. I just feel really bad for him, but he was written extremely well. Like, Sprout himself was written really well. Phyllis, on the other hoof, well, I don't think she was written the best. She seemed fine at first. Obviously, she was evil or whatever like that, or at least somewhat bad or whatever. It doesn't matter. But by the end of the movie, you'll realize that she doesn't really have much character development. There's nothing that really happens where she's like, oh shit, I need to change. She doesn't get that moment where she has to realize that she has to change or anything like that. Now, sure, Sprout slowly starts taking over the town right from under her, and she starts to worry about him, but there's still nothing telling her that unicorns or Pegasi are good, so she's believing all that stuff. Then it's really weird that she suddenly changes her ways at the last moment and literally puts her life on the line so that they can have magic back. There's probably a pretty good argument that you can have here as well, that she knew her propaganda was a lie all along, and that's why she seemed to switch sides all abruptly or whatever. And you could honestly probably try to attempt the same thing with Queen Nova and Alpha Brittle, but they actually had a moment. They had a pretty big moment, actually, where Sunny tried to connect the two crystals to bring back magic right in front of them, and of course she fails because it's not enough. I think this, combined with the fact that whatever unknown things happened after Sunny left, it's reasonable that Queen Nova and Alpha Brittle settled their differences, at least temporarily, to go after Izzy, Zip, and Pip, because we know for a fact that they ran off after Sunny and Hitch. Then they were immediately met with a common enemy when they did find Sunny and Izzy and Zip and Pip or whatever. So it makes sense that after all that happened, especially after Sunny gave them hope just before leaving, and then also Sunny giving them even more hope after they arrive, that things could be better because there's a third crystal and she tells them about that or whatever. This makes sense that they would just change sides. Sunny showed them that neither of them had magic, so that's another reason why they would trust Sunny and sort of change sides, if that makes sense. So yeah, it makes total sense that Queen Nova and Alpha Brittle would change sides. So you can't really argue that as much as you can with Phyllis, because when it comes to Phyllis, she just kind of happens out of nowhere. She just happens so abruptly. Oh, I'm gonna throw myself in front of the others to protect these people that are trying to get magic back. It's really weird. It kind of comes out of nowhere. I will say real quick though, as a little side note for the Queen Nova and Alfred Brittle like turning around sort of thing, Queen Nova does save Alfred Brittle at the end, and it happens pretty fast. And I'm really glad they did this, where they didn't add the trope. I'm really glad they didn't do this weird, dumb trope that a lot of movies and shows and stuff do, where like two enemies or two people that have been fighting this whole time save each other or something like that, and the character looks at him and goes, "You saved me?" I'm so glad they didn't do that trope because it's so dumb. But yeah, they totally could have, but they didn't, and I'm glad they didn't. But moving on, one weird thing that actually bothers me a little bit is the inclusion of certain details that don't really come into play later, or don't even matter at all for the most part. One of these details is Hitch's animals attraction thing, whatever you want to call that. It's established very early, and it suggests to the audience that it's going to be very important. And sure, we see him interact with animals, but 99% of the time that he does, it's usually a joke. Like, there's literally a scene where just a rat just randomly comes out of the trash or something like that and just hugs his leg, and then that's it. That's the whole bit of like, that's it. That's all that happens. There's of course the bunnies that also point at something behind him, but that doesn't necessarily really count. Like, that doesn't feel like it should count, right? It's just weird. Every time his powers comes into play, it's just as a joke almost. There is one time where his animal affinity, or whatever you want to call it, actually does come into play, and that's when Queen Nova finds him because the flying dog was secretly tracking him because of his badge that he left behind. Honestly, that's almost enough for me, but it's not quite enough for me. I think it was an important moment, but it seemed like we were going to get something way different and more significant with his ability or this detail or whatever, but we just didn't. It's almost like something was cut out of the movie that involved his powers. It's almost like it was just said to establish his abilities so that the series will make more sense when it comes out later. The other case of weird details is Izzy's ability to see luminescence, or your sparkle, or technically it's your aurora, or whatever you want to call it. She mentions that she can do this right at the beginning of Act 2 or whatever, but it never comes into play. Like, it literally never comes out of play at all. We also don't even really get context on what that means. We just don't know what it means, and she just mentions it like 3 times throughout the whole movie. First at the beginning when she introduces it, then at the second part where we get to see Zip. She's flying on some fake contraption, and she's like, "Oh, your luminescence is like really big right now. It's like really glowing," or whatever. And then the last time, it's revealed that Pip's sparkle is aquamarine. It's such a weird detail, but it doesn't matter at all. Not the Pip sparkle thing, but just the whole sparkle thing at all. The fact that she can see that is just such a weird detail that doesn't matter at all, but feels like it should have mattered. At least give it a little bit more importance, like you did with Hitch. Like, at least give us one tiny little thing like you did with Hitch. Because this almost just looks like they had plans for that too, but they just cut it out. Like, they had some big plan where she was going to do something cool, like uncover some secret somehow by using this ability, or come up with a clue or something like that by using this ability or something like that, but we just didn't get anything. Most likely, it was added to establish her abilities too for the follow-up series, so I feel like that's most likely what happened with that, is they just gave them their abilities in the movie so that the series will make more sense or something. I have no idea, but it's a little bit of a nitpicky thing, and it bothers me. I don't know why, it just does. It almost makes me feel like we're missing like 30 minutes of this movie or something. Like 30 minutes so that they can use their abilities and show them off and have importance and use to them, but also time for Phyllis to turn over a new leaf and actually be good and start doing good things and stuff like that. It just feels like we should have had more time in the movie. Just 30 more minutes, I think, would have been enough. I also mentioned earlier that there was symbolism and foreshadowing, which was pretty cool. The foreshadowing happens right away within the first 20 minutes, which, by the way, the first 10 minutes of this movie are extremely wholesome. But when Sunny is playing with the others at the very beginning of the movie, she's obviously wearing the fake Pegasus wings, and then her father puts on a fake horn, and then he puts that fake horn on her, who is also wearing the wings already, so now she has fake horns and fake wings on, which implies that she's going to become an alicorn at the end of the movie. This same foreshadowing happens a second time in the factory, not very much longer after either. It's like pretty soon after this initial foreshadowing, but they have like a song, and then there's a little bit of dialogue and stuff like that, and then they just immediately give us more foreshadowing on this exact same thing. So she's at the factory, robot wings are put on her, then a robot horn is placed on her, and then she becomes a alicorn again, so to speak, and it's again foreshadowing that she's going to become an alicorn at the end of the movie. I don't know if both of these foreshadows were intentional. I feel like one might have been a mistake or something like that, just because of the fact that it's kind of weird to foreshadow something twice. You don't really normally see something like that unless it's just happening throughout the entire movie, and maybe it does happen more often in the movie and I just don't realize it, but the fact that it's foreshadowed twice back to back and then never foreshadowed again makes it seem like one might have been a mistake and the other on purpose. But on to the symbolism, and I could be reading way too into it, but I do feel like there is a little bit of symbolism in this movie near the end when Sunny starts packing away the main 6 toys. It just seems really symbolic to me. It's almost like they are literally packing away Generation 4 in favor of Generation 5. It's showing them move on from one gen to another, and it might even be telling us that, look, this is it, Gen 4 is over and Gen 5 is here to stay. I think this scene just hits way different when you think about it like this or look at it like this, and I don't know what it was about the scene or whatever it was, but I just immediately thought of this as soon as I saw it for the first time. It's just, wow, that's just screams symbolic to me, and I don't know why. The ending was a little bit expected, but also unexpected for me, like I mentioned earlier as well. The ending was a little unexpected for me because I expected them to put all 3 crystals in the lighthouse and for that to actually work, but it didn't. It didn't actually work.
It didn't work.
Okay, just literally everything about this scene. Honestly, the entire final battle is just incredible, but this scene in particular is just so incredible, and I just had to pause the video here to kind of just break this down a little bit. This scene is so impactful for so many reasons. This huge build-up. The music is getting more and more intense. Things are getting more and more intense. People are almost dying, and then they finally put it in there. It's finally put in, and then the music just completely stops. The acting here is just incredible. You can literally feel the sense of horribleness that is in her voice. She's literally just, it didn't work. Like, there's just a huge amount of disappointment there, and then boom, finally the final hit hits them on top of this final hit. Like, it's a final hit that it didn't work, and then this final hit of them actually destroying the lighthouse and everything and falling down or whatever. It's just incredible. The fact that they did this in slow motion, the fact that they cut the music the way they did, the lighting, everything, just, it is the most beautiful, amazing scene that is in the entire movie, in my opinion. And expecting this to work, like watching it for the first time, I expected this to actually work. Like I said in the other part of the video, I expected this to actually work. And when it didn't, you know, being disappointed myself, and then also the characters being disappointed that it didn't work, and this, it just hits so different and special, and it's just one of those things that, like, this movie is incredible, guys. It's incredible. You got to see it if you haven't seen it yet, even though I've done spoiled basically the entire thing at this point. I obviously didn't expect it to work when they only had the other 2 artifacts and try to put those together in the forest in front of the other tribes or whatever like that. I expected that not to work because there's obviously a 3rd artifact. Like, I knew that was going to be a thing. That was very clearly what they were going for here, is that there's an artifact for each tribe, and they were missing one there. So I expected that not to work. But even when all 3 of them were combined and it still didn't work, I kind of sat back for a minute and I was like, wait, what? And I was caught off guard. It genuinely caught me off guard. Eventually, the real ending happens, and things end happily ever after. So yeah, a couple more things. First, I thought it was really weird that Sprout didn't try to continue his attack or do literally anything else after crashing the machine. He just kind of stood there. That's just it. He just doesn't do anything after that. He climbs out of it and stands next to Phyllis, and that's it. He just doesn't do anything. Maybe he was just under the impression that his plan worked or something because the lighthouse was destroyed, and maybe he thought, oh, I succeeded in stopping them from bringing magic back or something. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. But maybe it's also the fact that he almost ran over his mother, and that made him realize what he was doing was wrong. I don't know. It's a nitpicky thing, and I find it really weird that everyone just stops doing everything as soon as he crashes. He crashes, and everyone just stops doing everything. He climbs out of it. Obviously, he's okay. Everyone's okay. But they just all just kind of stand by and do nothing. It's really weird to me. And lastly, this movie was really freaking good. It was really great. I really do think that Gen 5 is going to be a good series. It has a bright future, especially if they can maintain the same animation and CGI quality. Oh, and one more thing. Sunny obviously becomes like this alicorn thing, but like it looks like a temporary power-up, but also we didn't see the power-up go away at all, so I'm very curious of what's going on with that. I wonder if this is something that she'll be able to call upon whenever she wants, like maybe in the future, like in the actual series or something like that. Maybe it has something to do with, like, if they do a certain thing, she can activate this power. I don't know. It's kind of weird because she gets it and they don't really do anything with it. They don't explore that at all. They don't even really mention it at all. Like she becomes an alicorn and literally no one mentions it at all. I think one of them might say, oh, well, look at you or something like that, but they don't do anything at all about the fact that she becomes an alicorn. And even after everything kind of settles down and they're rebuilding Maritime Bay and stuff like that, like they're still not addressing the fact that she just became an alicorn. And I kind of find that a little bit weird and things like that. And then of course there's the after credits. The after credits really confuse me a little bit because I don't know if the weird hoof prints mean anything, or if that's just like I wanted a cool transition to end on or something. I don't know. It was really weird. But considering it's like after credit stuff, it seems like it should be important, right? But yeah, there you have it. I do hope that you enjoyed. If you did enjoy this video, if you did enjoy this very long review of this movie, then please do feel free to like, subscribe, share, and do all those wonderful things like that. Because when you do those wonderful things like that, not only get access to wonderful content such as this, but you also get to become wonderful yourself. And I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.